Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're unpacking a really profound sociological critique found in Dharmendra Garg's striking book, Rancho. Whether you've navigated one of these high-pressure educational systems yourself, or you're just fascinated by how societies shape human potential, you are going to find this incredibly compelling. We're going to look at exactly what happens when a culture decides to prioritize conformity over curiosity. Let's get right into it. The contrast here is just brilliant. You have these dark, identical, assembly line test takers on one side, and then this vibrant, chaotic burst of imagination on the other. It literally hits the nail on the head when it comes to the author's core premise, that massive tension between institutional domestication and individual brilliance. We're talking about a system that doesn't just, grade papers. It quite literally manufactures a specific type of citizen. To really understand how this educational machine operates, we're going to break the author's work down into 5 distinct modules: the manufacturing of minds, the student taxonomy, the cult of obedience, the silent epidemics, and finally, the price of originality. Starting off with Section 1, the manufacturing of minds, or as it's so aptly put, the assembly line of obedience. So here's the thing. No nation survives by openly, outright murdering imagination, right? Instead, it happens with this weird kind of cultural elegance. It's the slow efficiency of inherited fear, and it begins so innocently. It just slowly replaces authentic ambition with this choreographed social dance. Think about it. When a kid excitedly says they want to be an astronomer, the room just gives polite smiles. A musician? Someone uncomfortably coughs. A writer? Well, suddenly an aunt is deeply concerned about their financial stability. It is a quiet, daily erosion of possibility. And that brings us to a quote that just hits incredibly hard. It describes the spiritual equivalent of taxidermy. There is this chilling, totally unseen emotional cost to worshiping safe careers over authentic callings. By the time these students hit 17, they might look exactly the same on the outside, but inside, the author notes that the life has quietly departed. It's just a striking, somewhat heartbreaking way to visualize the loss of human potential. Moving right along to Section 2, the student taxonomy, also known as the stratified species structural matrix. Now, what's really fascinating here is how the author frames the students. In these high-pressure environments, they aren't just one monolithic block. They actually adapt into specific survival archetypes. It's almost like they're distinct sociological species wandering through the Republic of Indian education. We've got the archivist, the bearer, and the inheritor, and each one has their own operative focus, their own societal reward system, and a very specific, unspoken internal tragedy. Let's look at species alpha, the archivists. These are the students who treat education like scripture preservation. They don't actually study to understand, they study entirely to avoid error. They meticulously memorize dates, formulas, the exact anticipated answer structures. And society? Oh, society absolutely loves them for it, often weaponizing them against neighboring children as the ultimate gold standard. But their tragedy? Well, they ultimately become unbelievably excellent at repeating answers to questions nobody actually asked. Curiosity is just totally swapped out for absolute preservation. Next up, we have species beta, the bearers. I want you to just pause and consider the immense psychological weight these students carry. They study purely for socioeconomic rescue. To them, a report card isn't just a piece of paper, it's an ambulance. They're forced to optimize for immediate survival over their basic humanity. To a bearer, failure isn't an embarrassment, it's a literal catastrophe. They simply don't have the luxury of exploring their passions because, as the text so powerfully notes, hunger is a remarkably persuasive career counselor. And then we have species gamma, the inheritors. Think about whether you, or maybe someone you love, fits into this category. These are students living second-hand destinies. They are essentially abandoning the authentic versions of themselves to settle ancestral debts and live out a family's second-hand fate. Maybe they secretly love wildlife photography or music production, but their life is subcontracted to phrases like, "Papa knows better," or "You can pursue your hobby later." This leads us right into Section 3, the cult of obedience and the institutional metamorphosis of potential. So there is this incredibly cruel middle-class phenomenon where actively suppressing yourself is actually celebrated as maturity. It's a tragic conversion that takes place daily. A child who questions logic is immediately labeled arrogant, while one who just blindly complies is called responsible. And the result of all this, we end up treating extraordinary filmmakers for average accountants. Brilliant teachers get turned into resentful engineers. As the author points out, entire universes are disappearing without so much as an obituary. Which brings us to section 4, the silent epidemics, examining the moral theater of glorified exhaustion. What happens when a society expects its young people to succeed financially long before they ever understand themselves emotionally? Well, struggle gets elevated into moral theater, and this breeds 3 devastating yet completely silent epidemics. You get anxiety dressed up as ambition, you have depression disguised as discipline, and you find deep loneliness hidden beneath productivity. Because stopping, even for a moment, feels sinful, burnout just gets mistaken for dedication. A student studying 16 hours a day is celebrated, even if they've completely forgotten why they even started in the first place. Finally, we arrive at section 5, the price of originality, and the emergence of the dangerous radical. Every now and then, an unconventional thinker emerges, someone who just flat out refuses intellectual domestication. This is the civilizationally dangerous student who starts asking alarming questions. Questions like, why exactly must intelligence be measured through memorization? Why are we prioritizing rote preservation over true comprehension? They aren't trying to be difficult, right? They're genuinely trying to understand reality itself. But that makes rigid, predictable systems deeply uncomfortable. They dare to wonder why our educational ecosystem actually teaches students to fear mistakes rather than analyze them. Why actively penalize the exact trial and error process that is literally necessary for true innovation? They quickly realize that a system built purely on safe repetition is a system that simply cannot evolve. And they ask, why does a nation of such immense creativity produce so many exhausted young people? The truth is, originality demands the courage to face uncertainty and potential public failure, and that naturally disturbs the entire architecture of predictability. Society loves to claim that it values innovation, but as the author so smartly observes, they only love it until it shows up at the dining table wearing the face of their own child. Because then, suddenly stability becomes sacred all over again. We'll leave you with this final, provocative thought from the author to reflect upon. Examinations may measure memory, but only courage measures imagination. The future really does belong to thoughtful courage, to those who can learn the formulas without ever surrendering their curiosity. So I'll ask you, what kind of life would make you feel truly alive? And are you measuring your worth by your memory or by your courage? Thank you so much for joining us for this explainer. I really hope it gave you an incredible, fresh framework for viewing the world.